Have you ever wondered how the apostles of Jesus, those who walked by his side and spread his teachings across the globe, met their ends? The journey of these men was marked not only by miracles and sermons, but also by extreme sacrifices. In today's video, we'll dive into the stories of these faithful followers of Christ, revealing the challenges and tragic fates they faced for their unwavering faith. James, the son of Zebedee, holds a prominent place among Jesus' apostles, not just for his closeness to the Master, but also for his tragic fate, meticulously documented in the Scriptures. Brother of John, another prominent apostle, James was part of Jesus' inner circle, witnessing miraculous events like the Transfiguration, Mark 9:2-8, and the agony in the Garden of Gethsemane, Mark 14:33-42. These moments underline not just James's importance in Jesus' ministry, but also the special trust Jesus placed in him and his closest companions. James's fate was sealed during the persecution of Christians initiated by Herod Agrippa I, a zealous ruler who sought to please Jewish leaders and strengthen his own political position. The Acts of the Apostles narrate James's martyrdom in a concise and direct manner. About that time, King Herod laid hands on some from the church to harm them, and he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. Acts 12:1-2. This passage is particularly significant as it's the only apostolic death recorded in detail in the New Testament, excluding the betrayal and suicide of Judas Iscariot. The reference to James's death by the sword strongly suggests he was beheaded, a Roman execution method reserved for severe crimes. His death around 44 AD not only marks the first recorded apostolic martyrdom in the Bible, but also highlights the growing hostility against Christians at that time, foreshadowing the difficulties and persecutions the early church would face. James's sacrifice, though tragic, served to strengthen the faith of his fellow apostles and early Christians, demonstrating the seriousness and cost of discipleship. The memory of his unwavering dedication and heroic end continues to inspire believers worldwide, serving as a powerful testimony to the commitment to spreading the gospel regardless of adversities. Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, was one of the first disciples called by Jesus on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. Known in the Scriptures as one of the first to follow Jesus, Andrew exemplifies the search for and recognition of the promised Messiah. John 1:40-42 narrates his first encounter with Christ, where Andrew, initially a disciple of John the Baptist, is introduced to Jesus and immediately recognizes his significance, rushing to tell his brother Peter, "We have found the Messiah." This act of faith and early recognition defines Andrew as a dedicated disciple and a fervent spreader of the good news. After Jesus' ascension, Andrew is said to have preached the gospel throughout the Black Sea region, Greece, and eventually reaching the city of Patras in the Roman province of Achaia. Bartholomew, also known as Nathanael in the Gospels, is one of the apostles whose faith and character are highlighted by Jesus at the moment of his calling. Found under a fig tree by Philip, who leads him to Jesus, Bartholomew is greeted with a remarkable statement, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." John 1:47. This initial interaction reflects Bartholomew's integral and sincere nature, as well as his readiness to follow Christ after being convinced of his divinity, exclaiming, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel." John 1:49. After Jesus' ascension, little is known about Bartholomew's specific ministry from the New Testament. However, later traditions place him traveling extensively to preach the gospel, covering regions that today correspond to India, Armenia, Ethiopia, and Mesopotamia. These narratives highlight his missionary zeal and significant contribution to the spread of early Christianity. The death of Bartholomew is the subject of various and sometimes contradictory traditions. One of the most enduring and horrific is that he was flayed alive. This tradition, particularly venerated in the Orthodox and Catholic churches, symbolizes the extreme sacrifice and suffering for the gospel. In some versions of this tradition, after being flayed, Bartholomew was also crucified, adding to the brutality of his martyrdom. These stories, although not present in biblical texts, have been perpetuated through centuries via works of art, literature, and church teachings, reinforcing his devotion and unwavering commitment to his faith. Despite the lack of concrete details about the end of his life in the scriptures, Bartholomew's legacy as one of the 12 apostles remains significant. His readiness to follow Jesus from the beginning, recognizing him as the Messiah, and his subsequent ministry, possibly culminating in a martyrdom of extreme violence, illustrate the depth of the early disciples' commitment to spreading the Christian message, facing extreme adversities to spread the good news of the kingdom of God. Thomas, often remembered as Doubting Thomas for his initial skepticism about Jesus' resurrection, is a complex and deeply human figure within the New Testament. His story is marked by a journey from doubt to faith, culminating in the famous declaration of recognition and worship to Jesus as "My Lord and my God." John 20:28. This moment, after Jesus appears to Thomas and invites him to touch his wounds, is a powerful testament to Jesus' mercy and the transformation possible through faith. Beyond the biblical accounts, Christian tradition significantly expands Thomas's role as a missionary. He is said to have traveled beyond the borders of the Roman Empire, bringing the gospel to Syria and eventually to India, where he established Christian communities among the local populations. The Mar Thoma Church in India, for example, regards Thomas as its founder, evidencing the lasting impact of his ministry. The death of Thomas is subject to accounts that emphasize his martyrdom. According to some traditions, he was killed by spears in Mylapore, near present-day Chennai in India, by local zealots who rejected his preaching. This act of faith unto death illustrates Thomas's transformation from a doubter to a martyr, willing to pay the ultimate price for his devotion to Christ. The story of Thomas, from his initial hesitation to his ultimate commitment and sacrifice, provides an encouraging account of the journey of faith. It highlights that doubt, when confronted and overcome, can lead to a deeper and more resolute faith. His legacy, perpetuated in both biblical texts and the traditions that follow, serves as a reminder of the transformative power of the gospel and the impact that one individual, transformed by faith, can have on communities and cultures around the world. Simon, called the Zealot, is among the most enigmatic figures of the 12 apostles of Jesus. The nickname Zealot suggests a possible affiliation with the Zealot movement, which advocated resistance against the Roman occupation of Judea, though the Gospels do not detail his political or military activity. Simon is mentioned in the lists of apostles in the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew 10:4, Mark 3:18, Luke 6:15, and in the Acts of the Apostles, Acts 1:13, but beyond his name, little is known about his ministry and actions from the biblical text. Despite the scarcity of details about his life and work in the canonical writings, Christian tradition provides accounts of his evangelistic missions, often in partnership with Jude Thaddeus. According to these traditions, Simon would have preached the gospel in various regions, including Egypt, Persia, and possibly Britain, demonstrating his zeal not for armed struggle, but for the propagation of the Christian faith. The circumstances of Simon's death are marked by a variety of traditions, reflecting the difficulty of establishing a precise historical account. Among the forms of martyrdom attributed to him are crucifixion and being sawn in half. A particularly widespread tradition claims that Simon was martyred in Persia, where, depending on the source, he would have faced death either by being sawn in half or by crucifixion, in both cases, for his tireless preaching of the gospel and conversion of many to the Christian faith. The legacy of Simon the Zealot, although sparsely documented in the scriptures, is enriched by these post-biblical traditions, illustrating his dedication to the cause of Christ. His willingness to face such a violent end for his faith reflects the deep commitment shared by all the apostles, evidencing the transformation brought about by the encounter with Jesus. His martyrdom, like that of the other apostles, remains a testimony to the cost of discipleship and the power of faithful witness, regardless of adversities. Judas Thaddeus, also known as Jude, the brother of James, is one of the less mentioned apostles in the Gospels, but his presence and contribution to early Christianity are undeniably significant. Differentiated from Judas Iscariot, the traitor, Judas Thaddeus is identified in a way to avoid confusion between the two. He is listed among the apostles in the Gospels of Matthew 10:3, Mark 3:18, and Luke 6:16, as well as in the Acts of the Apostles 1:13. A specific moment that highlights his presence in the New Testament is when he questions Jesus during the Last Supper about how the Lord would manifest himself to his disciples and not to the world, John 14:22, demonstrating his deep desire to understand the nature of divine revelation. Judas Thaddeus's later ministry, as reported by Christian traditions, led him to evangelize areas including Syria, Armenia, and possibly other parts of the Middle East and Asia Minor. These accounts, though extra-biblical, highlight his missionary zeal and dedication to the expansion of the gospel. The circumstances of Judas Thaddeus's death are shrouded in traditions that vary significantly. One of the most recurring suggests that he was martyred alongside Simon the Zealot in Persia. Descriptions of his martyrdom include being killed by axe blows, spear, or other violent means, reflecting the high price many of Jesus' early followers paid for their faith and testimony. The legacy of Judas Thaddeus, amplified by the Epistle of Jude in the New Testament, remains a testament to the disciples' unwavering commitment to Jesus' teachings. His life and martyrdom, though not detailed extensively in the Scriptures, are a reminder of the diverse paths through which the apostles spread the Christian message and faced persecution and death. The memory of Judas Thaddeus, sustained both by tradition and veneration in the Christian Church, encourages the faithful to persist in faith, even in the face of extreme adversities, and to seek a deeper understanding of the mysteries of the Christian faith. Matthew, also known as Levi, is one of the most transformative figures among the 12 apostles of Jesus. His story is emblematic of the inclusive nature of Christ's ministry, calling people from all walks of life. Before his calling, Matthew worked as a tax collector, a profession despised by the Jews of his time due to its association with exploitation and collaboration with the Roman occupiers. However, Jesus saw beyond the social stigma, inviting Matthew to follow him, a gesture that Matthew immediately accepted, leaving behind his former life to become a disciple. Matthew 9:9. Matthew's inclusion among the apostles highlights the message of redemption and transformation at the heart of the gospel. Besides following Christ, Matthew is traditionally credited as the author of the first gospel, a written testimony of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, serving as a vital bridge between the Old and New Testaments, emphasizing the fulfillment of the messianic promise. After Jesus' ascension, Matthew continued his ministry, spreading the gospel's message. Traditions about his missionary work and martyrdom vary, but a common narrative places him in Ethiopia. According to these traditions, Matthew faced martyrdom by the sword, a violent death reflecting the cost of discipleship and the reality of persecutions faced by early Christians. This final act of faith and testimony underlines Matthew's transformation from a tax collector into a courageous proclaimer of the gospel, willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of Christ. Matthew's story, from tax collector to apostle and martyr, is a powerful reminder of God's transformative grace, capable of changing the most unlikely hearts and lives. His journey of faith, documented in the Scriptures and amplified by tradition, continues to inspire Christians around the world to follow Christ's call, regardless of their past or the trials they may face. James, son of Alphaeus, is one of the apostles of Jesus Christ, often identified as James the Less or James the Just in Christian traditions to distinguish him from James, son of Zebedee. Though his presence in the Gospels is less prominent than other disciples, his inclusion among the 12 apostles underscores the diversity of the group chosen by Jesus to spread his message. James is mentioned in the lists of apostles in the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew 10:3, Mark 3:18, Luke 6:15, and in the Acts of the Apostles, Acts 1:13, highlighting his importance in Jesus' inner circle. After the resurrection and ascension of Jesus, the apostles dispersed to fulfill the Great Commission of preaching the gospel to all nations. James, son of Alphaeus, is said to have taken this mission to Egypt, a country with a rich cultural and religious tapestry. Here, he faced the monumental task of presenting the message of salvation through Christ to a people immersed in ancient and diverse religious practices. Christian tradition holds that James continued his ministry in Egypt until he met martyrdom by crucifixion. This final act of faith and testimony is emblematic of the apostles' dedication to spreading the gospel, regardless of personal cost. James's crucifixion in Egypt not only illustrates the hostility faced by early Christians, but also the deep conviction that drove the apostles to persevere in their mission despite extreme persecutions. Though biblical details about the life and ministry of James, son of Alphaeus, are sparse, his legacy as one of the apostles who carried the good news beyond Jewish borders is a powerful testament to the early expansion of Christianity. James's story reinforces the message that faith in Christ transcends cultural and geographical barriers, a fundamental principle that continues to guide the Christian mission today. Peter, originally named Simon, is one of the most central figures in the New Testament and early Christianity. As a fisherman from Galilee, Peter was among the first disciples called by Jesus, along with his brother Andrew. His journey of faith, marked by moments of profound insight as well as human failings, is detailed across various biblical passages, standing out as a story of redemption and leadership. The Bible portrays Peter as a leader among the apostles, often acting as the spokesperson for the group. He is mentioned more times in the Gospels than any other apostle, evidencing his closeness to Jesus and his prominent role. One of the most significant moments in his ministry occurs in Matthew 16:18 when, after confessing Jesus as the Christ, the Son of the living God, Jesus responds, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." This moment symbolizes the foundation of the church and Peter's special role within it. After Jesus' resurrection and ascension into heaven, Peter played a crucial role in the spread of Christianity, as documented in the Acts of the Apostles. His leadership in the early church and his powerful sermons were instrumental in the growth of the Christian movement. Christian tradition asserts that Peter met martyrdom in Rome under the reign of Emperor Nero, a period marked by severe persecutions of Christians. According to early church accounts, Peter was crucified upside down at his own request, considering himself unworthy to die in the same manner as Jesus. This act of humility and faith underscores Peter's transformation from a simple fisherman to one of the pillars of the Christian church and reflects his profound commitment and love for Christ. The life and martyrdom of Peter bear witness to the power of faith and redeeming grace. His legacy, preserved in the scriptures and Christian tradition, continues to inspire believers around the world, serving as an example of leadership, humility, and ultimate sacrifice for faith. John the Apostle is a unique figure among Jesus' disciples, known for his closeness to the Master and as the author of one of the 4 Gospels, 3 epistles, and the book of Revelation. Frequently identified as the disciple whom Jesus loved, John 13:23, 19:26, 22, 21, 7:20. John plays a crucial role in the New Testament, offering a unique perspective on the life and ministry of Jesus. Christian tradition and biblical texts portray John not only as a key witness to the events of Jesus' life, but also as a central figure in the early expansion of Christianity and the formation of the early church. Along with Peter, he is mentioned in the Acts of the Apostles as one of the pillars of the church in Jerusalem, Acts 3:1, 11, 4:13, 20. His gospel is distinct from the other 3 for its deep theological themes, emphasizing the divinity of Christ and love as the essence of Christian life. Unlike many of his fellow apostles who faced martyrdom, John is said to have survived attempts at martyrdom, including a notable one in which he was thrown into a cauldron of boiling oil and emerged unscathed, according to early Christian tradition. This miracle, not detailed in the scriptures, is often cited to illustrate the special protection afforded by God to John. Later, John was exiled to the island of Patmos, where he received the visions that make up the book of Revelation, a prophetic text offering hope and consolation to Christians amidst persecutions. Eventually, John is said to have returned to Ephesus, where he continued his ministry until dying of natural causes at an advanced age, a unique fate among the apostles. His tomb is traditionally located in Ephesus, marking a place of veneration and memory. The life and ministry of John exemplify the depth of relationship possible with Christ and the lasting impact an individual can have on spreading the gospel and strengthening Christian faith. His testimony, preserved in the scriptures, continues to influence and inspire generations of Christians worldwide. Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 apostles of Jesus, remains one of the most infamous figures in the Bible due to his act of betrayal. Judas's story is deeply intertwined with the final events of Jesus' life, culminating in the crucifixion. The Gospels provide a detailed account of both his role in the betrayal and his subsequent remorse and tragic end. Judas is often remembered for the sum of 30 pieces of silver he received to deliver Jesus to the chief priests and elders, Matthew 26:14-16. The betrayal plan culminated in the Garden of Gethsemane, where Judas identified Jesus to the guards with a kiss, a previously agreed-upon signal, Matthew 26:47-50. This act of betrayal not only sealed Jesus' fate, but also marked Judas in history as the epitome of betrayal. Judas's remorse after his betrayal is a crucial aspect of his story. Matthew 27:3-5 describes how Judas, seized by remorse, attempted to return the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, declaring, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." When they refused the money, Judas threw the pieces of silver into the temple, withdrew, and committed suicide by hanging. This tragic outcome is complemented by an additional narrative in Acts of the Apostles 1:18-19, which offers gruesome details of his death, adding that he acquired a field with the price of his iniquity, and there met his end, his body falling and bursting open. These descriptions aim not only to report Judas's end, but also to serve as a grim reminder of the consequences of sin and betrayal. The story of Judas Iscariot, though marked by infamy, is a critical component of the biblical narrative, offering lessons on human nature, the gravity of sin, and the depth of divine forgiveness. He is a figure that incites reflection on repentance, redemption, and the choices that shape our destiny. Matthias is a unique figure in the New Testament, known for being chosen to replace Judas Iscariot as one of the 12 apostles. This significant event is narrated in Acts of the Apostles 1:15-26, following Jesus' ascension. Peter, recognizing the need to restore the number of the 12, leads the community of believers in selecting a substitute for Judas. 2 candidates were proposed: Joseph, called Barsabbas, and Matthias. The choice was made by casting lots, a common practice at that time for decisions considered under divine guidance, resulting in Matthias' selection. The inclusion of Matthias among the apostles fulfills the restoration of the original group chosen by Jesus, maintaining the representation of the 12 tribes of Israel and symbolizing the continuity and unity of the apostolic mission. Although biblical details about Matthias' life and ministry are scarce after his selection, his choice by casting lots reflects the belief that divine guidance was behind this decision, ensuring that he was the right choice to take on the responsibility left by Judas. The traditions about Matthias' death are varied and find no basis in the biblical text. Some narratives place him preaching the gospel and meeting martyrdom in Ethiopia, while others suggest he died in Judea or Cappadocia. Regardless of the circumstances of his death, what remains is the testimony of his faithfulness to the apostolic call and his dedication to spreading the gospel. Matthias, though a lesser-known figure compared to other apostles, exemplifies the continuity of the apostolic ministry and the importance of each member in the collective mission of the early church. His story highlights divine providence in the leadership of the church and the unwavering commitment of Christ's followers to carry forward the message of salvation regardless of the challenges faced. Paul, originally known as Saul of Tarsus, is one of the most influential figures in early Christianity, whose dramatic conversion on the way to Damascus marks a turning point not only in his life, but in the history of the Christian church. Acts 9:1-19. Before his conversion, Paul was known for persecuting Christians, a zealous defender of Jewish traditions. However, after his encounter with the resurrected Christ, Paul became an ardent missionary of the gospel, establishing Christian communities throughout the Mediterranean and writing letters that would form a significant part of the New Testament. Paul's designation as the last of the apostles reflects his own description in 1 Corinthians 15:8, where he identifies himself as one abnormally born, acknowledging his unique and direct apostolic call from the resurrected Jesus Christ. This call and his subsequent mission were instrumental in expanding Christianity beyond Jewish communities, including Gentiles in the Christian faith. Paul endured multiple persecutions, imprisonments, and floggings because of his ministry, demonstrating extraordinary resilience and dedication to the cause of the gospel. His missionary journeys, detailed in the Acts of the Apostles, and his epistles to the churches he founded or visited form a crucial part of the New Testament, offering deep theological teachings, pastoral advice, and guidelines for community life. According to Christian tradition, Paul's ministry culminated in his martyrdom in Rome under the reign of Emperor Nero at the height of persecution against Christians. It is said that Paul was beheaded, a form of execution reserved for Roman citizens, which Paul was. This method of execution, unlike the crucifixion suffered by Peter, reflects Paul's legal status and the severity of Christian persecutions at the time. Paul's death is a testament to his unwavering faith and the lasting impact of his ministry. Through his letters, Paul continues to shape Christian theology, ecclesial practice, and discipleship, evidencing his legacy as a central figure in the foundation and expansion of the early Christian church.